Tactical radio communications can be quite complicated, yet we hear them all the time in movies, TV shows, and even in the field as an airsoft player. But how much are we actually learning and taking in? Well, let's find out. Listen carefully to the following radio transmission.
Roger Fringe, Wilco, Oscar Mike, ETA 7 mics, out.
So, how much of that did you understand? Let us know in the comments before we get started. And don't worry if you didn't get any of it, because by the end of this video you will have a much better grasp on how to decipher these types of messages. Before we jump into what to say, we should quickly talk about how to say it. There are a few basic rules you should always be observing when you're talking over the radio. First off, any transmission should be concise and to the point, while still including any relevant information. Most information relayed over the radio is time sensitive, and as the seconds tick on, that information slowly gets more and more out of date until the point where it's completely unreliable. It's also important that you never speak over someone who is already broadcasting a message, or if there is an active conversation already taking place. I mean, you wouldn't do it in person, so don't do it on the radio. Finally, you should be trying to use the correct terminology at all times in order to cut down on potential miscommunications. So what are the terms we should be using on the radio? Well, in the name of getting our point across, sometimes we have to spell things out for people, literally. This is why a phonetic alphabet is a useful system to adopt, as it cuts down on the possibility of misunderstandings. For example, if you said over the radio that you're going to capture location B, all it takes is a little static at the wrong time,
Moving to capture location B.
and now that could be easily taken as you're headed to location C, or D, or E, or G, or... Point being, if you think there's a chance that what you're about to say could possibly get misunderstood, then try to rephrase it or get spelling. Here's just one version of the phonetic alphabet, but there are lots of variations. Pick one that works for you and your team, and then get practicing. So for example, let's say you wanted to clarify that you were talking about the C in a transmission. For that, it would be Sierra, Echo, Alpha, SEA. This alphabet needs to become second nature to you in the same way that the phrasing of each one of your messages needs to be. So in order to understand how to properly frame our radio broadcast, let's look at this transcript and break it down a little bit. To begin with, it's important to indicate who we are and who we're trying to get in contact with. Usually the call sign of the recipient goes first, followed by yours. If you want a reply from the other person, then you indicate this by saying the word over. The start of a radio communication usually has the simple goal of establishing a connection between the correct parties. And again, we end with over. Sometimes though, we may need to break up our message into multiple transmissions, when you need to interrupt yourself, end the message with break. This tells the other person to wait, as there will be more information relayed soon. Once you've finished your thought, it's back to ending with over. When a message is understood, Roger acts as a kind of confirmation. It's like saying yes or I hear you. After the conversation is concluded, usually the person who initiated the conversation ends the final transmission with the word out. Now, contrary to popular belief, this is the correct way to sign off the radio, not over and out. Because if we apply what we've learned so far, that basically translates to please respond, but I won't be here. And for those of you wondering, Wilco is simply short for will comply, meaning that you intend on complying with the most recently issued command. If you learned anything today, then it would mean a lot to us if you considered subscribing, as we do work very hard in an attempt to always offer insightful airsoft education in our videos. In the next lesson on radios, we'll be covering even more advanced tactics to help keep your conversations secure from the other team. As always, thank you so much for watching. Class is dismissed.